I hope everyone enjoyed their Labor Day weekend. We are back to our regular schedule here on the channel. Right now, we are in the beginning of a very special time of year. In my personal opinion, we are in the beginning stages of the best time of year. Woke up this morning, taking the kid to school. It almost felt like fall outside. Now, that doesn't mean it'll feel like fall all day today, but at least the weather is getting comfortable during the mornings and the evenings. We are coming off of week one of the college football season, week one in the NFL starting on Thursday. Best holidays of the year are happening in the next few months: Halloween, Christmas, and my personal favorite, Thanksgiving, also known as my birthday. We have training camp in the NBA starting this month, with the regular season starting in October. Fall festivals, winter vacations. There is so much going on. There is so much to look forward to this time of year. But, there is one event that supersedes all others. There is one tournament that dozens and dozens of people look forward to throughout the year. This tournament features some of the finest pretend athletes the country's ever seen. Airball dunks, no-look passes that make for nice souvenirs for the one identifier sitting in the front row. Exciting facial hair counting contests that decide pivotal overtime games. This is the time of year that retail chains have a difficult time keeping stock of Just for Men in Preparation H. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you are just as excited as I am. I want you to make some noise. I want you to show your excitement because the WNBA playoffs officially begin next Wednesday. Show me your excitement. Come on, let me hear you. Really? Am I the only one excited for the dump decathlon? I know that can't be the case. I know for certain that WNBA dump divers are excited for the postseason. After a grueling regular season of having to share the porta potties, the winners of the WNBA finals, they are granted exclusive access to the golden toilet throughout the offseason. Now that alone is cause for excitement. There are more eyes on the WNBA this time of year than any other month of the year. Networks like ESPN see huge spikes in ratings. They see a massive increase from nothing to almost nothing. The WNBA playoffs, it also gives the beautiful women of the WNBA a chance to make some extra pesos. Teams that qualify for the playoffs, their employees go from making minimum wage to barely hitting the poverty line. Now, this is a win-win. Dump divers, they have some spare change in their pockets, but they still qualify for subsidies and woke welfare. All of this should be cause for celebration, right? This time of year, we should be hearing zero complaints from our beauties in the WNBA, right? The participants in the WNBA, they often refer to their league as the W. Most people are fooled here. They think that W stands for women, but that cannot be further from the truth. For starters, not all employees in the WNBA choose to identify as women. Some choose to identify as birds, like the recently retired Sue Bird. Some choose to identify as victims. Some choose to identify as huge embarrassing failures, like one of our favorites here on the channel, Bob Griner. But the W in WNBA perfectly describes all the identifiers in this league because the W stands for whiners. That's all these dump divers do, whine and complain. Earlier this year, the diva of dump divas, Cathy Engelbert, she made a bit of a premature proclamation. Chatty Cathy was feeling talkative and generous back in February. She made the exciting announcement that during the WNBA playoffs, all pretend basketball players would enjoy the luxury of private airfare. No more almost being recognized in public airports, no more being mistaken for garbage women at the Greyhound station and being asked to take out the trash, no more being approached by people like Alex Stein, who is trying to give these bearded beauties some free publicity. No. Cathy Engelbert promised her employees if they make the playoffs, they would be rewarded with chartered flights. We're processing trash up in the sky, brushing our bearded manes, living the life. This should be cause for celebration, right? Over the last couple of years, the number one complaint in the WNBA has been this fake need for private airfare. WNBA players, they like to claim it's a need. They claim it's required. Of course, that's the entitlement talking. Private airfare is not a need, it's a privilege. It's a privilege given to those who have earned it. For some reason, though, the entitlement has clouded the minds of WNBA players to the point that they really believe they have earned chartered airfare. Never mind the fact that most WNBA arenas are filled to less than 50% capacity. Never mind the fact that television ratings are in the pooper. WNBA players saw $75 million in sympathy money donated last year, and they believe that money should be used for private airfare. And they are still going to receive chartered flights during the playoffs. But there's one problem, one tiny problem that has dump divers once again overflowing the complaint box. Back in February, when Cathy Engelbert told WNBA players they would receive chartered flights for the playoffs, she promised it would be for the entire postseason. I think the wording she used was the full playoffs. But as it turns out, Chatty Cathy was not being completely honest here. Over the weekend, the front office and the dump, they issued a revision to their flight policy during the postseason. Let's say the Dallas Wankers are playing the Seattle Shitfucks in the first round of the playoffs. The Wankers close out the series on the road in Seattle, and they begin their next series on the road playing the LA Sparkles a week or so later. The Wankers, they will have a decision to make. The dump will pay for their chartered flight home, or they will pay for their chartered flight to Los Angeles. They will not pay for both. If a dump diver chooses to fly home privately, they will have to fly commercial to Los Angeles, or ride the Greyhound, or for those who pretend to be concerned about climate change, they can ride their Schwinn. Now, just to be clear, the WNBA will pay for those accommodations. They'll pay for the bus ticket. They'll pay to put air in the bike tire. What they will not pay for is 2 chartered flights when one of those flights isn't needed. Now, this seems pretty reasonable to me. This seems like a fair compromise. Why should the WNBA pay to fly you home, then turn around a few days later and pay again to fly you on the road? This is not the NBA, a league filled with discretionary income. Look at it like this. If WNBA players were responsible for paying for these private flights, do you think they would volunteer to pay for an unneeded flight home when you're just going to turn around and fly back out on the road? Most of these pretend basketball players, they can't afford to pay for the free peanuts and coach. They can't afford a few $100s to upgrade to first class. Now, obviously, if they were spending their own money, they would not pay for an unnecessary private flight home. But they damn sure don't mind complaining. They damn sure don't mind spending the money when it belongs to someone else. Over the weekend, a handful of WNBA players, they got on social media to express their outrage towards Cathy Engelbert. Alicia Clark, who plays for the Las Vegas Anonymous Faces, she complained that trash engineers would not be allowed to fly privately if the next dump they were traveling to was within 200 miles of their home dump. Why would you need private airfare to travel 200 miles? Just borrow the cheese wagon from the high school gym that you're playing in. It can get you there in about 3 hours. Once again, WNBA players, they are failing to understand this simple concept. Recently, the league conducted a poll. They asked their employees for ideas on improving the WNBA. There was not one player who suggested improving the product on the court. There wasn't one player who made a suggestion that would increase public interest. The vast majority of employees polled, they said the best way to improve the WNBA was to implement chartered flights throughout the season, not just the playoffs, the entire season. The employees, they believe this goal is attainable because they received a $75 million donation from woke corporations last year. Now, Cathy Engelbert is under immense pressure right now to use that money on chartered flights, but I'm going to give Cathy Engelbert some credit here. I know I make fun of her. Well, I don't really make fun of Cathy Engelbert. I just enjoy making fun of these entitled pretend basketball players. But to her credit, Cathy Engelbert, She is a smart woman. Unlike the dump divers who are constantly whining and complaining and don't know shit about fuck when it comes to business, Cathy Engelbert actually understands business. Private airfare throughout the playoffs is going to cost $4.5 million. Now, if they were to implement private travel during the regular season, it would cost the WNBA $25 million. Well, Casey, that's great news. They were given $75 million. Yeah, they were given $75 million once. Cathy Engelbert is no dummy. She knows that she can't depend on sympathy money from woke corporations. She told WNBA players back in February, I am not going to implement chartered flights for 1 or 2 seasons. We have to get to a point where we can do this for the next decade. The problem is, they are not even close to reaching that point, and you cannot depend on sympathy money to get you there. Right now, the country's in a recession. If we're not officially in a recession, we're at least heading in that direction. Now, what is the first thing that corporations eliminate when business is declining? Ad spending and sponsorship spending. When the economy is booming, woke corporations, they've got the discretionary income to donate to charities like the WNBA. When the economy is receding, the dump is on their own. Cathy Engelbert has laid out a plan to get these entitled whiners their chartered flights. Other leagues pay for private airfare through their TV deals. That's what we're going to do in the WNBA. We are going to demand more money from ESPN and other networks. Don't worry, ladies and women pretending to be men. We will be flying privately very soon. Yeah. There's just one small problem with that strategy. Who is the exclusive home of the WNBA? What is the one network that pretends to care about the WNBA the most? ESPN. How's business at ESPN right now? It sucks. ESPN is barely clinging to life. The network is struggling financially. The current WNBA deal with ESPN, it is worth less than Steph Curry's NBA salary. Current deal expires in 2025, which means negotiations will begin some point next year. Guess what else comes up next year? ESPN's deal with the NBA. Guess what else is coming up for renewal? ESPN's deal with the NCAA to carry the women's college basketball tournament, which they falsely describe as March Madness. Now, of those three, which is the least valuable to ESPN? You guys are smart. I don't have to answer that question for you. I understand why WNBA players want private airfare. I get it. I don't like flying coach, and I'm only 6 foot tall and weigh 190 pounds. I imagine it is super uncomfortable for a 6'7", 220, 230 pound WNBA player to squeeze into the window seat next to Frank Fatfuck. The issue here is not the demand for private airfare. The issue here is entitlement. This mentality that the league owes you private flights because you're a pretend basketball player. If you want private airfare, do what the rest of us have to do. Go out and earn it. Increase attendance, increase television ratings, increase public demand interest for your product. Quit expecting a handout. Now, I often get called out for criticizing women's sports or the WNBA. If you don't like women's sports, don't watch. I don't have a problem with women's sports. I have a problem with entitlement, which seems to be prevalent throughout women's sports. The World Cup filled with entitlement, WNBA filled with entitlement. The Nebraska volleyball team, they just drew 92,000 people to one of their regular season games. 92,000! That is phenomenal. Now, I don't know anything about volleyball in Nebraska, but good for those young women. Something they are offering was able to convince 92,000 people to watch them play. They must be offering something worth seeing. That is the biggest problem in the WNBA. The product you're offering is not resonating with people. But give me your thoughts. WNBA players, once again, trashing Cathy Engelbert over chartered flights. They're receiving chartered flights during the playoffs, and they're still complaining about it. I swear, these women in the WNBA, they are furthering their own demise. Cathy Engelbert is trying to keep this league afloat, while the players are constantly complaining about luxuries they haven't earned. Have you noticed recently, we haven't heard anything about WNBA television ratings or attendance? Have you noticed that? Do you think the WNBA will draw during the playoffs? Playoffs run from September, I think, to early October, the heart of football season. Give me your prediction. Will the WNBA playoffs be a success or another huge embarrassing failure? You let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys later.